right, stat students, we are going to be starting our new chapter today. We're in chapter 1, this is our second unit, and it's over exploring data. Okay, so a lot of you were concerned about last chapter being a little bit on the difficult side. This one is going to be more fundamental. It's the sort of like we're going to get into mean, median, and mode through this chapter. And it's one of my absolute favorites. You're going to get to use your calculator. It's a lot more hands-on and less of the deep concepts of statistics and more of just sort of manipulating data and stuff like that. So super fun. This first lesson, all we're really going to focus on is just a little bit of vocabulary. So we're going to go ahead and get started with writing out a few things. Okay. So in your notes, go ahead and you'd start a new page, Unit 2, Chapter 1, Exploring Data. We're going to write down some data vocab that you're going to need. Okay, so I'm going to list out these terms and then we're going to define them, and you'll write these in. So the first term is called an individual. We're going to put individuals. Next, variable. We have special types of variables. We have categorical, variable, and then we have quantitative variable. And then the last definition we're going to talk about is distribution. So this video is really just to familiarize ourselves with these terms, okay? So we're going to go ahead and start with these first four definitions. So we're going to be exploring data in this chapter. Here are the first four definitions. I'll pause it and put in a screenshot of this so you can get it copied, but I'm just going to go ahead and describe them. So individuals are objects described by a set of data. Variables, any characteristic of an individual. Then categorical variable places an individual into one of several groups or categories. And then quantitative takes numerical values for which it makes sense to find an average. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video and let you get that written down. All right, so you should have those written. Let's talk about these for just a little bit. Okay, we'll probably spend about 8 minutes just discussing these. So beginning of the year, I sent out these surveys here. Now, only 32 people responded to this one, so maybe I didn't have you on the remind yet or whatever. But most people, even distance learners, actually got into this and were able to fill it out. Okay, so I sent that one. And then not too long ago, this one is the very beginning of the year, but then like a week or two ago, I sent out this one, data collection, and I asked different questions in here. So we're going to talk about these today. All right. What's really nice about Google Forms, and if we have to do a project where you're collecting data, this will be a great application to use for that, is it puts it into a spreadsheet. Now, spreadsheets are going to be extremely important in this class. And in this chapter, we're going to be manipulating them and running numbers from them and stuff like that and calculating statistics. So I'm sure if you look on the list over here, you can probably find your name over here. And this was the one that I sent a few weeks back, not at the very beginning, but afterwards. And we have all these different variables. Let me expand that for us. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to talk about those. So here we have our definitions. And the first thing I want to talk about is individuals, objects described by a set of data. So if I go back to my spreadsheet here, this set of data here comes from you all, the individuals. Those are your names are over here. Okay. So that is that definition. Individuals are described by a set of data. Now, to continue, we talk about a variable, any characteristic of an individual. So at the top, we have all of these different characteristics. How long it takes you to drive to SCHS, what day of the month you're born, favorite season, number of siblings, height, hair color. All those things are variables. Now, the purpose of this video and this lesson is for us to describe the difference between categorical and quantitative variables, okay? Categorical puts you into a category. Quantitative is numerical, and it has to make sense to find an average, okay? Like the average actually seems like it's going to tell us something. So here we go. We're going to practice this. You're going to be answering questions as I ask them in the play posit. So let's start here. How many minutes does it take to drive to SCHS? Is that quantitative or categorical? So you should have put quantitative, because right here, how many minutes does it take? We can find an average of that. In Excel, I can actually do that really quick. Let me go ahead and do that. I can do an average. So the average time is 12.5 minutes to drive to school. Okay. Next, what day of the month are you born? Quantitative or categorical? So this seems like it makes sense to be quantitative because it is a number. However, does that number actually make any sense, like the average birth day of the month? Not really. So here's a special case where a number is actually a category. Like if we did this for the whole school, we'd have to have a distribution, which we'll talk about in a second what a distribution is, but there'd be multiple people that would have the same day because it only goes from 1 to 31. All right. And if I average this, like think about it, if this gets averaged, it's going to be about, okay, so in ours it was almost 20, but if like we did this for a lot of people, it should be about 15. It should be right dead center, 15 to 16, because it goes from 1 to 31. Okay. So that average doesn't really make much sense. Next, favorite season, categorical or quantitative? So here, this is a pretty easy one. These are categories. And usually when you see words, that's kind of what it is. It's categorical, okay? Number of siblings, categorical or quantitative? So quantitative would be what this variable is. I can easily take an average that makes sense. 3.5 siblings is the average for statistics students that have filled this out. Height. Is height categorical or quantitative? You should have said quantitative. Quantitative, if I take an average, it always makes sense to take an average height. We're about 5'3" and almost a half. 5'3.5" inches is what we're looking at here. Assuming everybody measured themselves correctly or knows how to convert from feet and inches to just inches. All right, last category here is hair color, categorical or quantitative? These are definitely categories, okay? Definitely categories here, so categorical. All right, so I've got two more that I want to talk about, and then we'll pretty much wrap this up. What about your name? Is that categorical or quantitative? So definitely not quantitative, right? But is it really categorical? Are these categories that we're going to have repetitions? I mean, technically they are, but there's so many different categories that it's not really worth it. You'll notice how I limited this category. You had 4 choices, and that made sense. Over here, hair color, I actually limited the choices you had, and you had to pick from those. So usually with categorical variables, you want to limit the number of possible responses. For instance, we only have like 2 duplicates. So we have Madison, and then I know Maddie, like legal name Madison here. So we have a couple duplicates, but besides that, there's not really any duplicates. So this, like, I would have a lot of different categories here of the names. Okay. So I have one more that I want to look at. This is the beginning of the year survey. And in this survey, I asked students to rate how much they enjoyed math. Okay. And here was the actual survey question. Math might not be your favorite subject, but try to rate how much you enjoy math. So is this quantitative or categorical? So this is quantitative. Even though I put you into distinct categories, like you had to actually like pick the value, I didn't let you go beyond that. This is still quantitative because it does actually make sense to find an average rating. So let me do that. So 3.21. So I expect that above the middle, most stat students enjoy math. If I did this in a non-honors or AP math class, this probably would be, a smaller number. But that's that idea. Even though like I put you into 5 categories, this is still going to be a quantitative value that we could call this quantitative. Okay. And in here you could make it categorical, but I could have just renamed these instead of using numbers. Okay. I could use their English names. Okay. All right. So that's going to be our lesson over categorical and quantitative. Hopefully that makes sense. You have a homework paper that will be up for you to do that. Last, let's look at a distribution. So a distribution tells us what values a variable takes and how often it takes on those values. So I'll pause it and let you write that. Now, a distribution, I want to simplify sort of the way that we say that word, just so that it hopefully makes a little more sense. A distribution, another way that we're going to be saying that is like if you see it on a test question or anything like that, if we're creating a distribution, this is graphs, tables, and charts. Any graph, any table, any chart is technically what we call a distribution. Okay. So I just want you to remember that going forward. Anytime you see the word distribution, all it means is look at the graph, look at the chart, look at the table. Whatever is in the question given to you, that's what it's talking about. Okay. So with that, we're going to go ahead and stop this lesson. Pretty brief one. And then you've got another one to go before you're actually able to complete that first assignment. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the lesson there.